Well, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is episode 2. It's from 13 to 17 years old. But if you haven't watched my first one, I'm going to kind of urge you to go back and watch that one that was my life from 0 to 13. And it'll set you up for this 13 to 17. And then in the next video, a little bit. And then the video after that, all these parts of my life are going to come together. Tell you that story when that time comes. But I wanted to tell you about a story on Saturday morning. It was springtime. It was in Michigan. At the time, it wasn't funny, but I look back on it now, and I must have been a hilarious sight. I'll tell you that. So, if you can, picture I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan. It's 1966. Saturday morning service. It's springtime. It's sunny, but it's still chilly, like 58, 60 degrees. And I was going door to door by myself. And all these homes were very majestic, 3 stories high. You had the turret towers on the corners. And it was it, it was a time these houses were built during the lumber barons back in the 1880s, maybe a little earlier. Michigan was a booming lumber town. Well, I knocked on this 3-story white house. You couldn't see in the windows, so I knocked on the door. I was going by myself because Mom said, if we get the territory done, we can go home. So I knocked on this door, and the lady come to the door. This older lady, I'd say she's probably about 70. And I started my presentation. I looked up after her at the introduction, after I showed her what was on the Watchtower and Awake magazines. Her eyes became glassy looking. Well, what's going on? And then she looked at me and told me she was going to lay her hands on my head and heal me. And then she started speaking in tongues. Can you imagine that? 12 years old. And she come out on the porch with the door wide open, come after me and tried to put both hands on my head. Now, you have to realize the horror stories I was told growing up about the holy rollers and how they had the devil in them and how they would go into trances. Well, that wasn't going to happen to me. So I ducked her advance. I twisted to the left. Then I jumped to the right. I dodged her. And I saw an opening to go down the 3 steps off her porch. Well, I tripped over her uprising board on her porch. And I fell down all 3 of them. And just like the movies, she was coming down those stairs after me. Well, I had ripped the knee out of my dress pants and scraped my knee up pretty good. I got up just in time to be able to run again with her close on my heels. Now, when you went down her sidewalk to go to the main sidewalk, down her, pathway to her house, the sidewalk, you had to go down another 3 or 4 steps to the sidewalk. Guess what? Oh, yeah, I did. Tripped over a crack in the concrete. Fell down those steps and ripped my left sleeve on my arm and scraped my arm from the wrist to the elbow. Now, all this time, I've been taught if that ever happens, you start saying, I call in the name of Jehovah to rebuke you. Well, I was saying that. I was going, Jehovah God, in his name I rebuke you. In Jehovah's name I rebuke you. I must have said it a dozen times during this whole ordeal. And I got up finally from there and I ran down the sidewalk away from her, and she had quit pursuing. I ran to our car, locked the doors, and I was not going to let anybody in except my mom. Basically, I was scared out of my mind. I want to say another word, but I won't. Well, I hope that gave you a chuckle. Well, on to my life story. As previously mentioned by me in the other video, my mother got married in the summer of 67. Well, at this time, just my mother and me and my younger brother Scott. He's about a year and 10 months younger than me. We were buddies. Beat up on each other, but we were buddies, and nobody else better mess with you. And I said I wasn't going to give names, but to keep track of everything the best I can, I have to use their names. So I'm going to just use their first names of my family members. Well, I had two older brothers. The oldest one was Rick, and Tom was the second one. Then was my sister Loretta, who was the middle child. And then there was me, and then there was my younger brother Scott. So now I got that out of the way. I don't know who I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. My mother's name was Elaine. Now, my mother got married to this guy. I don't even know what she found attractive in him. He had a mean look on his face all the time. His eyes were pushed and bugged out. He had this short, thin mustache just across the top of his lip, and he acted like he was mad all the time. Well, as events played out that summer, the first summer was not too bad. Things went fairly normal. Well, then spring came in 1968. My stepdad had a garden about the size of a football field. He had increased its size with plowing and disking with our tractor. So now he had free slave labor. That was a good size. We had to plant and we had to maintain it, weed it, water it, care for this garden. And then we had to dig a root cellar in the side of one of the hills. My brother and I had to dig the hole. This is where we stored our potatoes and our root vegetables. It was a pretty good sized root cellar, about 8 by 10. We also had strawberry, raspberry, and blueberry bushes and strawberries. But to take care of all this, it took a lot of time and energy. So my stepdad, as young kids, basically, we had to get up at 5:30, 6 a.m. every day. No sleeping in. And then when we got up, we had to eat some sort of obnoxious food. I'm sorry if people are into this health stuff, but that's not going to let me with my palate. I mean, he made it with health food and wheat germ, cod liver oil, made us drink, and or some other healthy stuff that my stepfather could dream up in his mind, some concoction that he thought was good. Made me and my brother gag, I'll tell you that. And I'll be the first to tell you, young teenagers are going to get in trouble. And when they do, I'm a firm believer in their punishment should fit the crime, so to speak. The more severe the crime, so to speak, the more severe the punishment. But I soon learned there was no less punishment than a whipping. My stepdad had made a whipping paddle, and he used it a lot. It was 1 inch thick wood, or 3/4, 4 inches, so probably 3.5 inches wide, and he cut it 36 inches long. He carved and shaped the handle, added a grip so it wouldn't slip out of his hand. He left the last 6 or 8 inches of the paddle at about 4 inches wide. He then drilled multiple holes in it. I think they were like 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see it good. but it basically looks like a spatula. But it's wood, and he carved it down. If you look down the bottom, it shows you the countersinking and the holes drilled in the side from a side view. And he added a strap, drilled a hole through the end of the handle with a leather shoestring thing he tied so that when he was swinging it, he wouldn't let go of it. I guess in my book, if somebody's going to take that much time to make a paddle, that's the only thing that was on his mind, was hurting or punishing us. Now, when he'd swing that paddle, I don't know how he did it or if it was intentional or not, but it would make an eerie whistling sound. Now, with the holes drilled in it and them being countersunk, when you hit you, not only would you get bruises from it, on top of the bruises, you would have painful blood blisters from the holes in the paddle, right through your jeans. Yeah, we wore jeans a little tight. That was the style back then. We'd have it on our butts and our back of our thighs. Every time he'd hit one of us, Scott or I, he'd be yelling, "You're never going to amount to anything," over and over, like he despised us. I really think we were in his way. So one time my brother was in our warehouse. It was about 100 by 60. And my stepdad had been saving windows. He was trying to get on a ladder, trying to get something off the shelves above where he had been placing storm windows, stacked them. He was trying to get something off the top shelf on a ladder, and something fell over besides what he was holding on to and went down a heavy canister, nails or something, and it went through some of the windows and broke them. It was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. Well, he got 15 to 20 licks, probably pushing more 20. And I was crying while he was getting it. I was there. And then another time at age 14, I was driving a tractor. And between that warehouse, and we had a gas pump, and there was a car sitting by the gas pump. There was enough room for the tractor to go in between the car and stuff. But it was a little muddy. And I was trying to squeeze between them. And that old car, it was rusted. Windows were broken out, and all I did was haul fertilizer and nails or little pieces of wood or something, whatever we needed around the place. Well, I was trying to get in there. I hit the brakes, and nothing happened. I had little to no brakes. So I ended up sideswiping that old car with a snowplow that was still on the front of the tractor. Well, I got the beating of my life, same as my brother got. Now, we didn't take this sitting down. So we went and told our mother about the whippings and how we thought they were unjust and unfair, and the many whippings that came after it. She would just say, "You're not used to having a man around the house, and you need discipline, and I think you needed it." So that just told us my brother and I were all alone in this town where we didn't know anybody. All alone. No advocate for our safety. Only ones that might have and probably would have been my uncles on my mom's side that were non-JWs. But because of the cult religion, families started drifting apart. This is an effect that happens to all families once part of them get into Jehovah's Witnesses. They start separating themselves from them. They would have helped. I know they would have. In fact, my cousin told me that her dad would have. And she said the other uncle too. I'm not going to give those names, but if you're watching, cuz you know who I'm talking about. Well, my two older brothers were either fading or working on getting to fellowship. I don't know what. They were never in town. They were hitchhiking the USA. They were going from Michigan to California to Florida to the East Coast to the West Coast, North and South. They were all over the place. But little did I realize, a little later on in life, what I found out was, and put this together in my head and with what they had said, they were dodging the draft, the Vietnam War. They never had a permanent address and couldn't be found, which I'm going to say turned out quite effective for them. Now, my oldest brother, Rick, was down on his luck. He was hitchhiking. He was hungry. Had no place to sleep. He was sleeping under bridges. He was basically starting to starve. And he started hitchhiking, and a guy picked him up. And my brother held him up with a knife. Took his car, his wallet. He had a bunch of camping equipment in the back. Took it all and went up into the mountains out west. I want to say it was Wyoming or Arizona. I'm not sure where. Then he went, after he got something done, he went and went to LA. And that's where he got arrested. And guess what? He was put in prison. San Quentin. And soon he was disfellowshipped. Then my oldest brother, Tom, he got wrapped up in drugs. And he was soon disfellowshipped for conduct non-becoming a Christian. Now, I used to write my brother Rick once a week, or tried to. I felt he needed the encouragement just as often as I could, and he would write back. But finally, my stepfather found out, said that I shouldn't be talking or writing to him. I was expecting the beatings, but by then the beatings were starting to subside, but I was brought before the elders because of my communication with my brother Rick. I basically told them that he was my brother and he needed my encouragement since nobody else was. And that was what I was doing. I was giving him encouragement to come back. To my surprise, they left me alone. Now, as I look at it now, it's probably because I was not baptized yet. So they could have probably disassociated me, but they didn't. And at this time, I really didn't know what was going on with my sister. I'd ask my mom, where's Loretta? Oh, she said she's staying with an uncle and his family. Now, in the previous video, and hopefully in this video, I told you how pretty my mother was. Very nice looking lady. Well, my sister, she's the prettiest woman I had ever laid eyes on. You can believe it or not, but she could have been a runway model. And I was always proud to say that she was my sister. And I love her till this very day, and I always will. Loretta, if you're watching, I love you, sis. Well, she did at one time come out and stayed with my stepdad's son and his wife on the same property. They lived in the same 10 acres we did. Well, that didn't last long because the stepdad's son and the stepdad's son-in-law, they worked together in the basement of the house that they're in. They had a record distributing business. Well, the stepdad's son and the stepdad's son-in-law, who was a JW, kept flirting and hitting on her to where she couldn't handle it anymore. So she left. Honestly, to where I don't know. But soon she was disfellowshipped for going on a date with a worldly guy. That's what I'm told. What a sicko cult, isn't it? To be wrapped up that tight. Got their death grip on you. They want you there to bleed you and take you for everything you're worth. And basically just not give you anything in return. By now I was baptized. Yeah, I got baptized. I had peer pressure from the teenagers in the congregation I went to. And my mom and my dad were pushing on to me. They're saying, "Well, you're 16. It's time to get baptized. What do you think?" Da, da, da. So I finally caved in. I was trying to put it off if I could. But now my mother, I think personally, she never told me this, but mother losing her children to shunning or disfellowshipping, I think it took her toll on her emotionally. So what did I do? I love my mom. So I did the best I could at being a good JW. Started vacation pioneering and winter break, spring vacation and summer vacation, which I know made my mother happy. But I'll tell you one thing, deep in this heart, I wasn't happy. Because I had this huge, so to speak, cross to bear with being molested at 4 years old, almost 5, and the beatings from my stepdad, which my mom chose to ignore as part of the discipline that my brother and I needed. Excuse me, I have to get a drink. Sorry. But I couldn't ignore those deep down values. That family was important, and I loved my brothers and sister. Basically, that's all I had when I was growing up, till about almost 18. Well, I also love all my cousins, but we began losing touch with them as this brainwashing cult took over your mind, tightened its grip on your mind, and would only let you think what they wanted you to think. I was a puppet. Now, I was just in the 10th grade, October, 16 years old, in the fall, when we got a call that my grandfather had been in a very bad accident, car accident, and wasn't expected to live. Now, I love my grandpa. He was special. So my stepdad and mom were getting ready to go to the hospital, and I started getting some clothes on. They asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to the hospital." My stepdad right away spoke up and said, "That's no place for children." Now get this, I'm 16 years old, not a fully fledged adult, so to speak. I wouldn't say that I was, but I was no child either. And that was my grandpa. But I couldn't go. They wouldn't take me. So I had to sit home fuming. I fumed, I fretted, I worried. Not even a phone call from the hospital let me know what was going on. Well, my grandfather passed away that weekend. That night, that evening. Sorry. And I was so mad I could have shot my stepdad. I'm glad I didn't now, but it ran through my mind. Well, 3 days later was a funeral for my grandfather. He got up early in the morning, as always. He said, "You have to go to school today. You can't take time off from school to go to a funeral." So him and my mom made me go to a funeral. I was an A and B student. I didn't have problems in school. But they said I couldn't go. Now, this is where the real loathing of my stepdad began. I already had some good things that I felt were reasons to despise him, but I started hating him and to look at him as a piece of crap he was. Sorry, I went a little far. Now, because my grandfather had died, the house that they had lived in, my grandma alone could not afford it because they had both had Social Security checks and they could afford it. So, one of my JW uncles had a mother-in-law house in the back, or a cottage, or it was a two-stall garage, changed it into a bedroom, living room, kitchen, and bath, and it was nice. And my grandmother moved into there. And because she had to move, we moved. We moved from the sticks, that very rural area that we were at. We moved back into town. The house my grandfather lived in. We lived in that same very house. Now, I've been going to school for 4 years at the school north of town. I had a part-time job now. I have my own car. And I wanted to drive for my senior year back to the school that I had been in for 4 years. These are the only people I knew. I said I can use my old address and they would never know the difference. My stepdad butted in and said, "I know you can't do that. You'd be lying if you said your address was still in that small town we lived in." So guess what? I had to go to an inner school, which was pretty bad. Where I only knew probably one, maybe two. I think just one was a Jehovah's Witness. I had some other people that I'd been in elementary school with, but I had basically only one friend who went to the school also. And the one that was there was my lifelong friend, Daryl. Now, that guy would have done anything for me, I feel, and I would have done anything for him. He knows. He's my lifelong friend. Well, to me, he kind of looked like a blonde John Lennon. He had his hair parted in the middle all the way down, come down to about here, and he had round glasses, the round ones with. Daryl was a great guy. He died about 2 years ago. Rest in peace, Daryl. You're thought of and loved always. Now, I had girlfriends before, don't get me wrong. I mean, these little infatuations, and it lasts for 2, 3 weeks to a few months, and then that ain't gonna work. That's something that. So, back when I was just before I turned 18, I became very fond of a girl in our congregation, and we started dating. Well, after probably 6 months, I started falling in love with her. Yeah. You may say, "Oh, you're only just 18 or 17. You don't know what love is." But today I can look back, and I did. I fell in love with her. I had visions of us being together forever, with a new world, new paradise, get married, have a few kids. Well, then about a year and a half later, after seeing her for about a year and a half and becoming very close, doing a lot of stuff together. Something shattered my life. Totally shattered it. Took me back. It's like a stab in the heart. Well, I'm going to stop there because my next video is from 18 years old to 24. But stay tuned for what happens. And I want to make a mention for ex-JWs, or if JWs just want to talk. There's a great group on Facebook. Just go to JW Survivors Original. That's JW Survivors Original on Facebook. And you can be with a group of loving, kind people that are an awesome support tool. They're not psychiatrists or anything. They're not that. It's just a group where you can say what you feel and nobody laughs, nobody sneers. They'll only give you encouragement. So until the next video, do me a favor. Keep fighting. Keep dreaming. Keep believing in yourself. And always be blessed.